Tech Tuesday on The Dana Barrett Show.
There are a number of sectors in the technology world in which Atlanta is really a leader. But I would say the top of the top in terms of global leadership is the financial technology sector, better known as FinTech. So it's not something that we all talk about on a daily basis. It's much more fun to, trash politicians and whatnot. But there's a lot of cool stuff going on in this town, and so we thought we'd dig in a little bit today. Scott Meyerhoff is joining me. He has two hats. Well, he might have 3 or 4 hats, but 2 that I know about. One is CFO at InComm, and the other is chairman of the board of directors for FinTech Atlanta. Scott, good to see you.
Thank you, Dana.
A pleasure to have you here. I was saying before we came on the air that a lot of Atlantans probably hear FinTech and think it has something to do with sharks. So that's not right, correct?
No, it is not.
So financial technology, FinTech, as I was saying, is huge here. But I don't think a lot of Atlantans really realize what that means. So can you just take a big step back and give us kind of an overview of the industry and how much of it's here in Atlanta?
Sure. If you start thinking about FinTech, it's something every one of us does each and every day. When you swipe a credit card to buy something online or in a store, a debit card, a gift card, any type of loyalty, incentive, rewards, all the things that go on that require a swipe, a scan, or an EMV, that's generally run by systems that are moving those monies and enabling the transactions to happen.
Yep.
So from the earliest of days, Atlanta was a banking hub way back when. But if you look at that, they had branch banking laws that required some Byzantine structures. And because of that, a lot of the leadership for banks moved to North Carolina or to Alabama. And
right.
I think we still see that even today with BB&T and SunTrust. The lineage of the talent of the bankers went other places.
Gotcha.
However, all of the technology assets and the people that ran the systems for the banks and created things back in the days of Pat Thomas with a company called FFMC, or what was the beginnings of any number of technology companies like Fiserv and FIS and Global Payments and CheckFree, all of those assets were technology that resided in Atlanta and broader Georgia.
And so that was, and some of those companies I know people recognize because they probably had friends that worked at them and they've heard of them, right? And some not. But that was because banking kind of was here at one point, because we were a banking hub.
Correct.
What were the years kind of around that?
You go in the 60s, there was the creation of something called Bank AmeriCard, which was the precursor to Visa.
Yeah.
So even when you see Hank Aaron on the sign of him hitting the 715th home run, if you look on the outfield wall, it says Bank AmeriCard.
Oh, how funny.
So you can trace this back to all types of pictures and interesting facts. But the key fact today is nearly 40,000 jobs, high-paying jobs, technology jobs, graphic artist jobs, any number of back office jobs tie themselves to FinTech and the processing of transactions that, like the power grid, we take for granted every day until, of course, it doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny to think about the history. So the bankers kind of left because of some of the different regulations, but the technology stayed here.
That is a true statement.
All right. So another term I think people probably have heard at least once or twice is this idea that we have Transaction Alley, really up the Georgia 400 corridor, correct?
Yeah, it starts really just south of downtown and goes all the way up through Alpharetta up the spine.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's funny because when did that start? When would you say that started?
Well, it's interesting. About 4 years ago, we were in a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce, and they were talking about their high demand career initiatives and how they were going to focus on certain industries to drive the growth of Atlanta.
Right.
And we heard all of these different things, and I kind of raised my hand and said, hey, what about FinTech? And they didn't know what FinTech was.
There you go.
Because, again, we take it all for granted. It works, right?
Yeah.
But the innovation in FinTech today is greater than at any point in the history of transactions, largely driven by the internet and the ability to do any number of things. But we tried to explain to people at that point in time that 70% of every credit, debit, gift transaction that goes on in the United States runs through companies out of Georgia, and largely Atlanta in Transaction Alley. So there was a group called the ATPC, Transaction Processing Coalition, a gentleman named Wes Richards and others coined the phrase Transaction Alley.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's really the phrase that counts more so than the actual facts, as we sometimes hear. But this one is actually backed up by real facts.
Yeah.
These transactions happen in companies based out of Georgia.
Yeah. and straight up that corridor, which is
Correct.
pretty cool. I wish we could do more with that. I wish, because Silicon Valley, I like the transactionality. It rhymes, whatever, but I just like the idea that it's really a unique thing that's happening here in Atlanta. That 70% of all the transactions are going through here. That's pretty wild.
It's fascinating and fantastic, really, for the city. People ask, other than just the whole banking laws, why is it here? Well, we're sitting on a north-south, high-speed internet corridor where transactions all around the globe can come back to data centers located here in Georgia and transact in under 100 milliseconds.
That's really pretty wild, I have to admit. Scott Meyerhoff hanging out with us right now. He is the chairman of the board of directors for FinTech Atlanta, the new chairman. Should I just call you chairman?
Be careful what I wish for,
there
right?
There you go, Chairman Meyerhoff. But talk before I let you go, because we're going to run out of time before we, even get to the good stuff. Talk to me a little bit about, what the coalition FinTech Atlanta really, what the mission is.
Sure. People have thrown out concepts of, obviously getting us better known, right? If you're here and nobody knows you're here, are you really here?
Yeah.
So how do you convince everyone we're here? I think we've done a better job of explaining that FinTech actually resides here in Georgia. But then what are the problems with that? And then how do you grow, and ultimately where do you get to? We think that the innovation of technology and the innovation of payments really allows for inclusion. If you start thinking about it, most folks, like you and I, Dana, we're not normal. We're not living paycheck to paycheck. We're not worrying about getting a credit card, a bank account.
Right.
We're not worried about pumping our gas. I mean, the average American's pumping $13.75 when they pump gas.
Right.
They're paying their power bill multiple times a month. So how do you level the playing field through payments that allows everyone to be on an equal footing, an equal playing field? And that's where the innovation of the 40,000 professionals that call themselves FinTech here in Atlanta allow us to change the world. So we looked at it and said, how do we get all these people together behind the mission, behind the ability to change everything? And it all starts with talent, because we don't want to go ahead and keep growing and stealing from each other.
Right.
So we worked with the University System of Georgia to allow for a new degree program, a FinTech curriculum. It's one of the first new programs in the university system in quite some time, led by a gentleman named Art Recesso. And Art and the USG has funded this. We have 500 people, students taking classes now, and our goal is in 3 years to have 2,000 degreed professionals graduate each year, which is a tremendous thing, because without talent, you don't grow. Without growth, you can't lead. Without leadership, you can't innovate.
Yeah.
So we tie all of this together, and it starts with the grassroots of talent, the backing, obviously, of the legislative body, because payments is one thing that's apolitical.
Yeah.
You bring jobs. Jobs is that famous four-letter word that everybody loves, right? And by bringing high-paying jobs, you give people good opportunities to feed themselves, grow a family, go ahead and be part of society. So I go back to the whole thing that payments is a societal difference that, by laying out an even playing field, it gets fascinating on where the innovation goes.
I kind of love the idea that there's two sides to that. One is developing the talent to take the jobs, and the other is to make payments accessible. You don't think about that, to your point, that everybody have access to bank accounts, to debit cards, to new technological ways to pay bills and to feed themselves that they didn't even have before, because that's the way the world is right now.
Think about this, Dana. When people today, we started working with Georgia Power to put a barcode on their bill, because people that don't have checking accounts or credit cards don't pay like you and I do.
Yep.
So you put that barcode, you walk into a CVS, a Dollar General, or Family Dollar, scan the barcode, tender cash, they paid their power bill. But
versus having to make them go to the office, which is what they're doing now, a lot of them. They have to go in person.
Go to a
pay
place
it.
open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, simplify their life, make a payment. And now what's interesting is we're finding people are paying 4 or 5 times a month.
Yeah.
We don't live the way everybody else does. We're blessed, but we want to go ahead and create a level playing field through FinTech Atlanta and payments that allows everybody to live the same way, not discriminate in any way.
That is very cool. I mean, I'm not going to lie, mind blown. Very cool. Scott, awesome to have you here. Congrats on the new role leading FinTech Atlanta. There's obviously so much more to talk about. We'll have to have you back. That again was Scott Meyerhoff. He is the new chairman of the board of directors for FinTech Atlanta. We'll post a link to all things FinTech Atlanta and Scott on our show notes page at